Hi everyone, and welcome to another tutorial. And sorry about the delay, it's been a while, I know, but I wanted to share with you something else which I find very useful about Ableton, and that's the fact that you can do quite a lot with the built-in effects, not just by applying the effects, but one of the things I really wanted to show you is that Ableton itself is literally limitless with how far you can push things, especially if we start working with audio effect racks. So I'm just going to show you a quick example with a track I've got here I've been working on. It is just bare bones structure at the moment. There's not a lot happening. It's kind of like a drum bass thing, and what I'm trying to do is I want to make these drums sound a little bit more interesting and unique, and at the moment they do sound a little bit boring, so I want to do I want to try to glitch them up on demand, so to speak. So I'm just going to play that for you just very quickly from this point so you see what the track sounds like at the moment. Nice, so that's the sort of idea behind the track. Again, I have to do more work. As I said, it's bare bones at the moment, and it's more work, right? But the core idea is there. And one of the things I was thinking of doing is applying movement to the drums. And one of the things that we can do, the effect racks, is the utilization of chains, right? And what chains allows you to do is just basically allow you to switch between one effect to the other effect in real time, and you can't choose any effects. So for example, you can see here, if I go to the chain area just right at the bottom, you can see at the moment we've got this chain selector, right? And this is actually mapped to a macro, right? So you can see that this is a effect select, and also I have limited the range, right? Because you can see it goes all the way from 0 to 127, right? So what you can do is you can actually, when you play around with macros, what you can do is you can limit the range as well. So you can say, okay, that's maximum of 8. So that's quite useful as well. So what I'm gonna do now is the following. I'm just gonna demonstrate this for you, so just so you see how it works. So obviously you don't want that to happen all the time. So one of the things that can be quite useful as well is to kind of draw automation here. So you can see that I can maybe just do it at the end of some of these drums. So, I can apply different sort of values. So you can see that goes into 2, that goes into 1. And that way I can add some kind of like movement on the track without being too intrusive, if that makes sense. You see? That bloop sound. Or I could extend it up a little bit so it's a little bit more obvious, maybe like, make it a whole beat, right, as you can see here. So that might be a little bit better, and you can play around by changing, as you can see, and changing this effect selector, and that changes the effect that's coming through. And you can see that for each chain, what I've got is I've got different effects. So for example, that one has got, if I just double click here, it will show me the chain that contains a beat repeat with certain settings. This one contains a beat repeat with something else. So beat repeat with frequency shifter and beat reduction, for example. So sky's the limit. You can create chains as complex as you like, and then you can save that and apply it to your projects in a sense, right, in the future. So you can have that saved, and at any given time, just imagine the amount of editing you will have to do to create something like this. So obviously this is similar to some plugins like Tornado, I think it's called, or Tornado, I think that's the actual name, where you just take a rotary encoder and you change between different effects. And it's a nice way to kind of like add elements of interest on a track, right? So as I demonstrated here, this is probably going to sound a little bit more interesting now. There you go. Right, so you can hear that, right? You can hear that. It just adds that additional extra, which can be great, you know, in order to just make the track more dynamic, right? So that's one thing. Another thing that's quite useful is I'll show you how to do this very quickly. I'm just going to check the time. Yeah, that's cool. So the other thing that can be quite creative as well is the fact that, for example, I can just turn that off. Sorry, just one second. There we go. So the fact as well that we can, if we like, we can map a macro control to a set of keys on my keyboard. So for example, let's say I delete this automation here, I just clear the envelope, right? And what I do is I go to MIDI Mappings, right, Command and M, and I say, okay, so that's, if we have a look at the effect selector, if I just undo that, it's got 8 spaces, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it'll literally be 9 keys on my keyboard. At the moment, I'm using the Ableton push to do this, and I'm using the user mode in the Ableton push. And this is one of the things that the user mode is very useful for, right? Or if you have another MIDI keyboard, you can map this macro to a range of keys on the MIDI keyboard, for example, right? So what I'll do now is I'm going to edit MIDI map, hit one key on the keyboard and hit the last key, right? And then you can see here that's mapped from C1 to G sharp, right? So that's actually 9 notes, right? So if I then play around with the notes on my keyboard, I can actually change between effects, right? And then I can obviously, I can also record this in at will, right? So it can be a little bit more interesting too. Right, and all the stuff that you heard, that if you think about the amount of editing you have to do, would be absolutely insane. So you can see the possibilities there, right? The other thing as well that can be quite cool as well is this. We can take an effect, let's say the resonator effect, right? I love the resonator, it's great. You know, it can add kind of like an interesting sort of sound to anything. But one thing that we can do, for example, here, I've got the rest of the keys on my keyboard. So you see I've got this dry wet control. So I can map that to MIDI and I can say, okay, dry wet is going to be controlled by C3. So if I press it once, it brings the effect on. If I press it again, it turns it off. And then what I can also do is I can take this effect on the note here and I can map it from a range of keys. So it doesn't really matter for now. Just gonna go like this. So yeah, so maybe from like, let me delete that. From that note to the last note here on the push. So you just have to hold the first one and then the last one, and you can see that that's mapped across E4 to D sharp 6. So that allows me to now, if I play around with these notes, allows me to kind of change the pitch. Obviously, these changes are too wide, right? That's massive. So it might be worth actually limiting those changes. So if we go back over to MIDI mappings, we can actually say, okay, that's too far. So I'm going to go a little bit maybe from, I don't know, C1 to C3 maybe, I don't know. Let's do that for now anyway. So now you can see that now if I press the keys, that's not as wide, right? So I can turn the effect on and off, sorry, and also I can play around with that. Let me just undo that because it's hitting that. Right, so let's play around with this. So I've got the dry wet and you can hear it. So it's again on my drums channel, and I'm just going to play press play. So you can see I can play around with that. I can actually turn the effect on and off by just hitting the dry wet that's mapped already, and then play around with the different notes. So I can actually do something really cool with it. So and obviously at the moment it's a bit boring, you know, I probably would create some kind of interesting chords, but just so you're aware. And the other thing as well that's worth experimenting with, I mean, just see, cool, this will be a quick one. The other thing that's worth experimenting with is if you feel a little bit lazy, just use presets and use like really crazy presets. So for example, if I use another effect rack, that will be empty, right? And because I don't know what I'm going for, that's not actually empty, that's my default audio effect rack that contains things inside it. There you go, let's delete that. So what I can do is I can say to myself, okay, I'm going to use the beat repeat, and I'm going to use one of these crazy ones like the robot voice, right? Then I add the chain here, and I'm going to say, okay, I got this Aphex doing crazy stuff I did ages ago. Then I can maybe go to my chorus, and I can use one of these really weird ones like warning. I can maybe find something else, you know, I can go to, let's see, maybe erosion, and I can make that wide and dirty, for example. And I can go to the flanger, and I can go to afraid of bees. I don't know, you know, just playing around with that. And now if I go to the chain, what I can do is I can create also, I need to create an empty chain. So just say create chain, so that would be empty. I'm just going to move it to the top. So there's nothing in it, right? Just going to call that empty. And then what I can do is I can move the rest of these ones. I can just move them across, so you can see the cursor changes, and I can kind of like move them so they're not overlapping each other. You can make an overlap if you like to layer multiple effects, but I find this quite useful like this. So let me just move that out of the way, and this last one out of the way. And now I can go here, macro map it, and you can see it moves quite a lot. So we need to limit that range. So let's go back over to the chain selector here. Let's go to the macros. Right, so it says, let's map that to macro one. And then let's go to where it says edit macro map. And then obviously that's too wide. So let's just make it, I think it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, isn't it? So maximum 6 values. Right, exit that. Cool. So that's it. And now I can just move it. And let's just go to the drums. I don't know how that sounds like, but might be fun. Right, so you can glitch things up in that way. Anyway, so I thought I wanted to share this with you guys, and I hope you enjoy this. And thanks for watching, and give me some feedback if you want me to cover anything on the next videos. Just let me know. All right, so take care, subscribe, and I will see you soon.